Mr. Lieu.
Thank you, Chairman Issa and Ranking Member Johnson, for holding this field hearing, and thank you to the panelists who are here today, Ms. Wilson, Mr. Mason, Mr. Moore, and Ms. Rothman, for your testimony. As a recovering computer science major, I believe AI has benefited society and will continue to benefit society. It can also be misused and cause harm, and I think what we're trying to figure out is how do we allow AI to innovate but to mitigate the harms. And Mr. Mason, I'm going to ask you some questions because I want to know what the Recording Academy's position is on some of these issues. As you know, these large language generative AI models train themselves by scraping the entire internet to get data. Some of that includes copyrighted works of artists, such as, for example, Taylor Swift. Do you believe artists such as Taylor Swift should be compensated by these software companies when they use her material to train themselves?
Yes, we believe that people that have spent their whole lives, like Lainey, to create art that is being used and monetized should be compensated when it is being used. Yes.
Let's say a person who is a fan of Taylor Swift uses one of these models and generates lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift for his or her own personal enjoyment. Do you think that person has to pay anything to Taylor Swift? And do you think the software that generated that has to pay anything to Taylor Swift?
I think it would come down to use, what they used it for their personal enjoyment. Might be something to discuss, but as soon as they start monetizing that or trying to commercialize it, that's a different question, and they should be paid.
And I gather it's the same answer if the person was able to use a AI app that takes the lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift and then matches it up to a video that looks like Taylor Swift and audio that sounds like her. Same answer, right? It depends on what they use that for. If it's for their own personal enjoyment, maybe it's fair use, but if they try to sell it, it wouldn't be, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Mr. Moore, I'm going to ask you sort of the same questions. Do you believe AI models that scrape copyrighted material to train themselves need to pay the people who own this copyrighted material?
Our position is that those are going to be fact-dependent. Oops, sorry. Thanks. Our position is that those are fact-dependent inquiries that are going to be handled by fair use law. We don't take a position on either side.
If a person uses one of these software tools to generate content for their own enjoyment, do you have a position on whether that software tool or that person needs to pay anything to the copyright holder?
So, in dividing that, that's two separate. Those are two very different questions. One question involves the use of the tool itself and the output, right? And so, in that particular instance, that is another. I think that's another issue that's going to be litigated because in that context, it's a lot like a Betamax. In other words, this is a technology that is capable of a lot of substantially non-infringing uses. And so I'm not sure that liability would attach to the model itself. Again, that's something the courts are going to have to work out. With respect to the output, the question there becomes whether or not the output is substantially similar. And at that point, once the user makes that product more widely available, there would be exposure, there's potential exposure to copyright liability as well as to Lanham Act liability, for example, if they were passing it off as an original work.
Okay. What if the software company marketed their software as saying, hey, use us and we can generate for you lyrics in the style of Taylor Swift and make audio and video in the style of Taylor Swift? You think they would be liable if they did that?
Under existing law right now?
Yes.
I think you would have questions about endorsement. Styles are generally not, they're not protected by copyright. So there wouldn't be copyright liability for that. There could be, again, false endorsement liability.
And your association basically right now is just waiting for the courts to decide these issues. You don't really have a position on a number of those.
On the copyright issues, that's correct. We do not have a position.
Okay, thank you. And Ms. Rothman, I'm just trying to understand your testimony, and you can answer. I'm going to have my time end. Are you saying that a artist can't contract to sell, for example, their ability to have a recording that's going to be used in a, let's say, a future movie, a song in a future movie? I'm just trying to understand what it means that you can't transfer this right. Maybe I'm not understanding what you're saying.
Yeah, that example is a license. So you're giving permission, you're authorizing the use in a specific context. That's in keeping with all of addressing all the concerns that are raised here. The person has approved a specific use, they've given permission, then the movie studio or the record label who has permission for that recording would be able to enforce any uses if someone, an unauthorized person, subsequently used that recording or capturing of the voice, even if it was manipulated by AI in the context of the sound recording or the movie. So that is completely legitimate, would allow someone to get income, but it wouldn't take away from that person those rights. And I don't think people are aware of how many contracts they sign actually give rights to their voice and likeness and name to others. And it's a big difference whether the federal government passes a law that enables that versus some state suggesting you can do that and then someone coming in and saying, actually, that violates the U.S. Constitution.
I got it. So you're supporting licensing versus transferring the right itself.
As long as the licensing is limited enough that it doesn't essentially become a transfer. So it needs to be specific enough so that the authorizing party, the identity holder, knows what they've agreed to, and the public can rely on that person's endorsement of the performance that they're going to see.
Thank you.